My name is James, and I am 65 years old, and the moment my life quietly cracked down the middle didn't arrive with a shout or a slammed door. It arrived with a laugh. Not a cruel laugh, those you can brace for. This one was casual, careless, tossed into the air like loose change. "You know how he is," my son said, waving his hand toward me. "He's basically a nobody now." He said it in front of his wife, at my own dining table, in the house I paid for. And I smiled. I had been standing at the kitchen counter, drying a mug I'd already dried twice. My hands were steady, but my chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped something important out of me and forgotten to put it back. "Nobody," his wife echoed, amused, her lips curling the way people do when they're trying on a word to see how it fits. "Well," my son shrugged, leaning back in my chair, "retired. No real income, just here." Just here. I watched them from the reflection in the microwave door, two people in their 30s, young, confident, certain the world was bending toward them. And there I was behind them, gray-haired, invisible, apparently reduced to furniture. I had raised that boy. I had worked 37 years at a job that wore my spine down one vertebra at a time. I had missed birthdays, anniversaries, weekends, because someone had to pay for braces and school trips and that first used car he wrecked within 6 months. But in that moment, none of it mattered. I was a nobody. So I smiled. Because sometimes, when you've lived long enough, you learn that silence can be louder than anger, and timing is everything. They moved in temporarily. That's how it always starts. Just until they got back on their feet, just until the market improved, just until they saved a little more. I agreed because I loved my son, and because the house was too quiet after my wife, Eleanor, passed away 3 years earlier. The silence had been the hardest part. At first, having them there felt like life returning, footsteps, laughter, the smell of coffee brewing too strong in the mornings. I cooked dinners again, set the table for three. But slowly, subtly, the house began to feel less like mine. My tools disappeared from the garage. My chair in the living room became his. Cabinets were reorganized without asking. My routine morning walks, evening news, was interrupted by their schedules, their shows, their noise. And I adjusted. Because that's what fathers do. We bend, we make room. Until one day, I realized I had bent so much I barely recognized myself. The word nobody stayed with me. It followed me through the house that evening, echoing off walls I had painted myself decades earlier. It sat beside me in bed, staring at the ceiling where Eleanor and I used to whisper plans for retirement we never quite got to enjoy. Nobody. Was that what I had become? The next morning I woke early and made coffee the way Eleanor liked it, out of habit, muscle memory. I stood by the kitchen window watching the sun crawl over the fence, lighting up the apple tree I planted when my son was 6. I remembered his small hands pressing dirt around the roots, his face smeared with mud, his laughter ringing out. I wasn't a nobody then, and I wasn't one now. That's when I decided. Not out of spite, not out of revenge, out of clarity. The house was paid off. That fact had always given me a quiet sense of pride. No mortgage, no debt, just a roof I owned outright because I had planned carefully and lived modestly. What my son didn't know, what I hadn't felt the need to announce, was that after Eleanor died I had quietly updated my will, consulted a lawyer, learned a few things about ownership, rights, and options. The house was in my name. Only mine. And respect, I realized, was not something you could assume would be returned just because you had given it freely. That evening I cooked dinner again, roasted chicken, potatoes, green beans with almonds, Eleanor's favorite. We sat down. They talked about their plans, their ambitions, the renovations they wanted to make someday. My son barely looked at me. After dessert, I stood up. "I need to say something," I said calmly. They both looked surprised. Concern flickered across my son's face, quickly replaced by impatience. "I've decided to sell the house." Silence fell like a dropped plate. "You're what?" his wife said. "I'm selling it," I repeated. "I've already spoken to a realtor." My son laughed. "Dad, come on, you're joking." I reached into my pocket and placed the house keys on the table. They made a soft metallic sound as they landed. "I'm not." The argument came, of course. He accused me of betrayal, of selfishness, of pulling the rug out from under them. He reminded me of all the times I said family comes first. And I listened. When he finished, I spoke quietly. "Family does come first," I said. "That includes me." He scoffed. "You're acting like this place is all you have." I met his eyes then, really met them. "No," I said, "I'm acting like it's something I earned." He didn't have an answer for that. The house sold quickly. The market was good and the place had character, as the realtor put it. On the day I packed my things, I walked through each room slowly, touching door frames, remembering. There was the hallway where my son learned to ride a bike, crashing into the wall and crying until Elena scooped him up. The living room, where we danced badly to old records on Friday nights. The bedroom where I held Elena's hand as she took her last breath. Letting go hurt, but staying where I was unseen would have hurt more. I moved into a small apartment near the river, nothing fancy, but it was mine, quiet, bright, manageable. I bought a plant for the windowsill, a new chair that fit my back just right. For the first time in years, I felt light. Weeks passed, then months. At first there was no word from my son, then a short text, then a call. When we finally met for coffee, he looked different, tired, older. "I didn't mean what I said," he admitted, staring into his cup. "I was stressed. I shouldn't have called you that." I nodded. "Words have weight," I said. "They tell people where they stand." He swallowed. "I guess I forgot. We're rebuilding now, slowly, carefully, on new terms." He no longer sees me as a fixture in the background of his life, and I no longer offer myself up to be diminished for the sake of peace. I am 65 years old. I am not a nobody. I am a man who loved deeply, worked honestly, and finally learned that dignity is not something you surrender, not even to your own child. The moral is simple. Respect is not owed because of blood, it is earned through behavior. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is smile, stand up, and reclaim the life you built with your own two hands.